Right now on Morning News Now, London calling. President Biden is in the United Kingdom this morning. On the agenda today, meetings with both Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and King Charles. This is a crucial diplomatic stopover ahead of a high-stakes NATO summit in Lithuania later this week. And with the ongoing war in Ukraine, many Western nations are looking to put an end to the violence. We've got team coverage coming up. Mother Nature's wrath. It's another split screen of severe weather impacting millions of Americans this morning. In the south and out west, no break from the unrelenting heat. While overnight in the northeast, severe storms brought heavy rains and deadly flash floods. We're covering it all in just a moment. Also this morning, a troubling health trend. Cases of malaria are on the rise in Florida. We'll have more on the warning from health officials this morning and the symptoms you should watch out for. And drive. It's one of the world's most popular spectator sports, and now Formula One is shifting into high gear here in the States. I talked to one of the sport's biggest stars, Lando Norris, for an interview that had me driving to survive. Literally.
Looks like Mario Kart there.
I know, right? It was so much fun. I was very nervous, but it was a lot of fun. We'll show you all about it later.
Good morning. I'm Joe Fryer. Good to have you with us on this Monday.
Yeah, I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you had a great weekend. We begin this morning with President Biden's visit to the UK and the start of a big week in Europe that'll see the president also travel to Lithuania for that key NATO summit.
The president is due to arrive in Windsor this morning for his first meeting with King Charles since the monarch was crowned. The president missed the coronation back in May, but was there for the Queen's funeral last year. Earlier this morning, the president met with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in London to discuss the war in Ukraine. The talks came just days after the U.S. controversially agreed to send cluster bombs to Kyiv. See, more than 100 countries, including the U.K., have signed on to a convention that bans the weapons from being used. Speaking to CNN, the president defended his decision to supply those bombs.
It's not an easy decision, and it's not. We're not signatories to that agreement, but it took me a while to be convinced to do it. But the main thing is they either have the weapons to stop the Russians now keep them from stopping the Ukrainian offensive through these areas, or they don't. And I think they needed them.
In just a few moments, we're going to hear from NBC News military analyst Colonel Jack Jacobs. But first, let's get to NBC News foreign correspondent Megan Fitzgerald, who joins us from Windsor. Megan, good morning. So we know the president's set to arrive at Windsor Castle shortly to meet with King Charles. What can we expect from that meeting?
Yeah, guys, good morning. Good to be with you. You're absolutely right. We are expecting the president to arrive here at Windsor Castle within the next 30 minutes or so. When he arrives, we know that he's going to be received by the king in the quadrangle of the castle, which is just behind me here. There will be the honor guard who will give the royal salute, and they'll play the U.S. national anthem. Then we suspect that the two will go inside the castle. They'll have tea. They're likely to discuss climate change. Now, of course, this is an issue that is near and dear to the king's heart, something he has been advocating for more than 5 decades now. We know the president has commended him on his efforts over the years. And the two will meet for the first time since Charles has been king. As you remember, President Biden did not attend the coronation in May, something that we don't typically see of United States presidents. Instead, President Biden sent his wife, Jill Biden. Guys.
So, Megan, as we mentioned, the president already met with Britain's prime minister earlier this morning. They, of course, talked about the Ukraine war ahead of this week's NATO summit. What was this meeting like for the president after that controversial decision to send those cluster bombs, something that Sunak says he discourages?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're talking about a fundamental difference here. Now, we know the United Kingdom is one of more than 100 nations that have signed that convention banning the use of cluster munitions. Now, the United States is not signed on to that convention, though the majority of its European allies are. So it's a difference here. But we have heard from the president on CNN talking about how it was a difficult decision for him to come to that conclusion, to send these cluster munitions, which have the ability to kill civilians, which is part of what makes it controversial. But nevertheless, we know that the two discussed Ukraine, their fierce support in helping Ukraine be victorious in this war.
And Megan, we know Ukraine's bid to join NATO could be discussed at this NATO summit. I mean, this issue really is somewhat divisive right now, especially between the U.S. and the U.K., right?
You're absolutely right. I mean, we have heard from Rishi Sunak's foreign minister who stood in support of Ukraine's mission to become part of NATO. In fact, he said that he wants to see this fast track, similar to what we saw for Finland in joining NATO. But the United States has a different posture there. The president doesn't believe that now is the time for Ukraine to join NATO. But also, we know that President Zelensky was given the invitation to attend the summit tomorrow in Lithuania. Will he be there? We don't yet know. But should he attend, we know that he's going to be going hard after this commitment that NATO has said back in 2008 that one day NATO will receive Kyiv. And so he wants to see some progress on that. But I want to play for you now a little bit of what President Biden said on CNN. Take a listen.
I don't think it's ready for membership in NATO. I think we have to lay out a path, for the rational path, for Ukraine to be able to qualify to get into NATO. And we have, when the very first time I met with Putin 2 years ago in Geneva, and he said, I want commitments on no Ukraine in NATO. I said, we're not going to do that because it's an open door policy.
So, guys, look, all eyes are certainly going to be on this convention as it kicks off, or on this summit, rather, when it kicks off tomorrow in Lithuania.
All right, Megan, reporting from Windsor, thank you so much.
Let's now bring in Colonel Jack Jacobs on this. Hi, Colonel. Thanks for being with us. So I want to start by playing some sound. This is from Congresswoman Barbara Lee criticizing this move by the Biden administration to send those cluster bombs to Ukraine. Let's listen to her speaking on CNN.
What I think is that we would risk losing our moral leadership, because when you look at the fact that over 120 countries have signed the convention on cluster munitions, saying they should never be used, they should never be used. And in fact, many of us have urged the administration to sign on to this convention. And so I'm hoping that the administration would reconsider this, because these are very dangerous bombs, they're dangerous weapons, and this is a line that I don't believe we should cross.
Colonel, what do you make of this decision?
Well, it was a very difficult decision, at least partially because of the fact that our allies, by and large, have signed on to the pact. But there's something to keep in mind. Two things, actually. The first is all of Ukraine is full of unexploded munitions, and when the war is over, they'll all have to be cleared. They're a danger both to soldiers and to civilians, and the place is full of them. The second thing is that the dud rate, the percentage of munitions that are unexploded, for the American side, for our munitions, about 2%. The Russian dud rate is about 35 or 40%. And it is difficult to envision how the Ukrainians are going to be able to pursue their defense in a situation in which they have a dwindling supply of munitions, artillery, rockets, and so on to defend themselves. And the production has not kept pace with use. It was a difficult decision, but the correct one.
Colonel, do you think, and this sort of seems like it's potentially what you're referencing there at the end, that kind of the progress of what we're seeing here with Ukraine's counteroffensive factored into this? Is this a desperation move?
Well, desperation is too much of a word, but it is slow going for the Ukrainians. Don't forget that when you attack, you have to have a 3-to-1 ratio against the defenders. It is much easier to defend than to attack. And the Ukrainians, secondly, have been looking for places in the line that will yield to a counteroffensive, and so far they haven't found it. They've been fighting around Bakhmut still, and so it's very difficult for the Ukrainians with dwindling ammunition supplies and a very difficult defense, a tough defense that has taken the Russians a long time to develop. It's very difficult for the Ukrainians to breach that. So it's not surprising that the Ukrainians have had a hard time. They have a very short period of time to actually make some progress before the winter's coming up. Before the winter sets in, it becomes even more difficult, Savannah.
All right. Colonel Jack Jacobs, always great to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Sure.
The U.S. military says it killed an ISIS leader in a drone strike on Friday in eastern Syria. In a statement, CENTCOM said the death will, quote, disrupt and degrade ISIS's ability to plan and conduct terror attacks. However, CENTCOM's operations against ISIS, alongside partner forces in Iraq and Syria, will continue in order to achieve the group's enduring defeat. CENTCOM added it was assessing reports of a civilian injury.
We're going to turn now to the severe weather sweeping the country. At least 42 million people across the East Coast were under flood watches this weekend. Here in New York, catastrophic flash floods led to at least one death Sunday night, and officials warn there may be more rain to come. This was the scene you're seeing on your screen right now in Orange County. That's about 60 miles north of New York City. Governor Kathy Hochul has declared a state of emergency for the area as crews continue rescue missions for a lot of people that are stranded in their homes and cars. According to the National Weather Service, the total amount of rainfall could rival the remnants of Hurricane Irene.
To the west, strong storms are continuing to cause widespread damage. Colorado was hit with more hail over the weekend, some of it the size of baseballs. National Weather Service issued several warnings for high winds and severe thunderstorms. And in the south, we've said it before, we'll say it again, no relief in sight. Temperatures there still soaring in the triple digits. Record heat is expected from Arizona to Florida. And experts warn this heat wave could be the worst in history. Let's take a closer look at how all this unpleasant summer weather could be impacting your week ahead. Time for your morning news now. Weather forecast.
That means Michelle Grossman joins us with all the details. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Hey there, guys. Great to see you. And we are going to continue to watch that flash flooding, potentially life-threatening in portions of New England, specifically northern Vermont. Burlington, you're included in that. Also watching the chance for really strong storms throughout the Central Plains, the Southern Plains, parts of the Midwest. And yes, we are watching that continuing heat wave. So let's start with radar in the Northeast. You can still some really heavy rain is falling. That's the brighter colors, the reds, the oranges, the yellows. And we're going to continue to see this today, not only today, but also tomorrow. It's sort of just training over the area. We have a very strong cold front that's moving through. It's kind of interacting with some tropical moisture. And that's why we're seeing these really heavy downpours. And this is the scenario we're going to watch all day long, just kind of pluming over the same area. And Vermont, you're going to be in the bullseye of some really heavy rain. So as we're looking at flood watches, flash flood warnings, the flash flood warnings are in red. You see a lot of them. That means flooding is happening now or it is imminent. So that is a very dangerous situation. You want to get to higher ground if you have to. Heed any of your local warnings. 27 million people at risk. We do have a flood watch for most of New England and portions of eastern New York, also parts of Pennsylvania as well. That's going to lead to the chance of some flash flooding. Where you see that light pink color, this is really where we have a high risk for flash flooding. That's intense 2-inch-per-hour rainfall rates, and that includes Burlington. Moderate risk is in that pink color, and that's going to be a big scenario as we go throughout the day. We're looking anywhere from 1, 2, 3, but possibly up to 5 inches. Even some spots could see up to 7. That's over saturated grounds, and that's going to create some problems there. So that's in portions of the Northeast. We're also watching some strong storms in the Midwest, into the Central Plains, the Southern Plains, a big area here. 9 million people at risk. We're going to see really gusty winds at 65 miles per hour. Large hail as well. That could cause damage. A few tornadoes are possible. And then look what happens tomorrow. It doesn't go very far. That's another front that's sort of parked over the area. So it's the same area that's going to see strong storms once again tomorrow. Portions of Nebraska, Iowa, the yellow shading is where we're going to see those strong storms. And then ending it with that heat once again. We're looking at millions once again under excessive heat warnings. 32 million people impacted. Temperatures into the triple digits. El Paso has seen 24 straight days of over 100-degree temperatures. That's a lot.
I see the forecast. It's just like it doesn't stop. It's just days and days and days of hot temperatures.
It doesn't stop and it doesn't move.
Yeah.
It's just parked.
Yeah. So important to stay safe during all this. Michelle, thank you so much.
Sure.
Well, this morning, several cities are still reeling from mass shootings over the weekend. In Ohio, police are searching for a suspect who opened fire on a group of people in Cleveland. In all, 9 were hurt. The suspect took off, and police say that investigation is ongoing. Meanwhile, in New York City, a man riding a motorized scooter went on a shooting rampage. 1 person was killed and 3 others were injured in that shooting. Police say the seemingly random attacks took place in Brooklyn and Queens Saturday morning. The alleged shooter was captured by police.
The federal grand jury that's probing former President Trump's efforts to stop the transfer of power after his 2020 election loss has heard from dozens of witnesses. That's according to an NBC News analysis. The investigation is examining Trump's conduct from the time before Election Day in 2020 through the January 6th attack on the Capitol in early 2021. Special counsel Jack Smith is leading that January 6th investigation into Trump. He's also the one who's looking into Trump's handling of classified materials. In that case, a grand jury in Miami indicted Trump last month on 37 counts, while the federal grand jury investigating January 6th is meeting in Washington.
Well, we got some news in the race for the White House over the weekend. The Iowa GOP just announced that it will hold the first in the nation Republican presidential caucus on January 15th. Many of the Republican candidates vying for the party's nomination have already been holding those events in Iowa, many in just the last week. Well, despite that large field of candidates, former President Trump maintains a large lead over his rival. This comes from our most recent NBC News poll. For more on this, let's bring in NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray. Mark, always great to have you with us. Good morning. So candidates in recent years who have won the Iowa caucus have not actually gone on to win the GOP nomination, most recently Ted Cruz in 2016. But that being said, this particular race still holds a lot of significance. So just remind us of this now that we've got this date, the importance and then also some of those quirks of the Iowa caucus.
Yeah, Savannah, you're exactly right. You know, the history of the Iowa caucuses on the Republican side necessarily has not been a predictor of who goes on to win the Republican nomination. Not only did Ted Cruz end up winning in 2016, but you also had Mike Huckabee, who won in 2008, and Rick Santorum in 2012. But what the Iowa caucuses do for Republicans and also Democrats when they have a contest there as well is that it whittles the field down, that you end up going from a large field, as we end up seeing on the Republican side, of a dozen or more candidates. And then once you end up having the contest in Iowa, then New Hampshire, and then South Carolina, you get down to 2 or 3 candidates, which makes it a lot easier for overall Republican primary voters to kind of make a decision on who they want to be president. And also, it's important to note that places like Iowa and New Hampshire have a lot of experience in kicking the tires on presidential candidates. They're usually small states and allow a lot of voter interaction with these candidates.
Mark, let's also talk through some of these candidates. We know Trump is the front runner for the nomination. That's been the case for a while now. But what does our polling tell us about the ranking of the rest of the field?
Yeah, there is an opening. And what our poll shows, when people are asked about second choice preference, you end up having that Ron DeSantis is kind of in that clear number 2 position. And then you have candidates like Nikki Haley, the former South Carolina governor, as well as Tim Scott, the senator from South Carolina, all in kind of close in double digits in that second choice support, and then followed by former Vice President Mike Pence. And so there, if your choice is not Donald Trump, then there people are kind of kicking the tires on other candidates. But I still think that Donald Trump, that 51% number in the national primary, and remember, we don't really conduct a national primary, but our national poll, 51%, when you have half the party saying, hey, I'm going to vote for Donald Trump, that's a big number with 6 months to go before the Iowa caucuses.
Absolutely. And speaking of Trump, he was on the campaign trail this weekend, taking parts in events in Iowa, later in Nevada. What did we hear and see?
Yeah, it was a busy weekend for the former president. First, he was in Iowa on Friday, where he ended up attacking Florida Governor Ron DeSantis on agricultural issues. And then on Saturday, he ended up going to Nevada, where he ended up speaking at a church. And then he ended up attending a UCF fight where there were lots of cameras and interactions with some of the celebrities there.
Awesome. Mark Murray, thank you so much. Good to see you this morning.
For Republican presidential candidates, culture war issues have become a major talking point. On Meet the Press over the weekend, moderator Chuck Todd sat down with one candidate, North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, to get his take on the topic. Here's Chuck.
Hello, Joe and Savannah. This week on Meet the Press, I got to sit down with Republican presidential candidate and Governor of North Dakota Doug Burgum, and I did it in Fargo to discuss his bid for the White House. Take a look at where he stands on this culture war debate.
I believe in states' rights. And I believe that the President of the United States has got a defined set of things they're supposed to work on, and it's not every culture war topic.
So you're not going to sign any abortion bills, you're not going to sign any transgender bills, you're going to stay out of every cultural issue if you get elected president?
Anytime that, when I was in the private sector and I had a chance to start from the tiniest startup, less than 10 people, build that into a 2,000-person company, I then had an opportunity to work at large global companies. anytime you're the CEO, if you're spending time on something that can be done, in a, sales office, out on the front lines dealing with customers, you're not doing your job. You got to be looking to the future. We need a president that's focused on the challenges that we're being faced as a nation, not a president that's going to decide whether a book is in the right section or not in a library in a small town somewhere in America. That is and that's part of what was going wrong now. The reason why we've got issues with our economy, with our energy policy, with national security that are just raft is because we are somehow, through culturally, media, whatever, trapping the presidency or expecting them to weigh in on every single thing. It's not the place that a CEO should be spending their time. It's definitely not the place where the president should be spending their time.
It's a little bit different than what you hear in the day-to-day of the Republican primary campaign. You can see my full interview with him at MeetThePress.com. You can also get a lot more Meet the Press right here on NBC News Now every single weekday at 4 p.m.
Thank you, Chuck. Appreciate it.
All right, coming up on this hour of Morning News Now, fresh insight into how the NBA plans to run its new in-season tournament. More on the rules and who's set to play who later in the hour.
But first, some frightening health news out of Florida this morning. 2 new malaria cases have just been reported there. How officials are responding and the symptoms you need to be on the lookout for. That's next. We're back with a new health warning with cases of malaria slowly on the rise in Florida. State health officials there say they've confirmed 2 more cases. This brings the total number of cases in the U.S. to 7. Just 2 weeks ago, 4 people in Sarasota County tested positive, along with 1 person in Texas. NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas joins us now from Miami with more on this. Guad, good morning. So what are health officials saying about these latest cases? Are they worried we're going to see more?
Joe, good morning. Well, there's no need to panic, but of course there is some concern, and this is all being addressed. So these new cases are in Sarasota. So Sarasota County is where all 6 cases in Florida have been reported. Now, health officials are telling people in that area, if they have flu-like symptoms, to pay special attention to the one symptom that is unique, which is the notoriously high fever. Some of the cases that have been reported initially, those patients had the symptoms, but they didn't realize it was malaria. Now, they are also controlling the mosquitoes in that area. Florida is a hot and humid place, so counties do have vector control departments that can address this issue. Sarasota County informed just on Friday that they were using planes to spray insecticide and kill some of these mosquitoes in the area. And of course, they are keeping close attention to that area in Sarasota. And there is a health advisory for the state of Florida since late June. Also, for the people that live in the area, if they're going to be outside, there are recommendations like wear pants and long sleeves. Of course, it is really hot. So if you're going to wear short sleeves, it is recommended, of course, to use the EPA-approved mosquito repellent. And also pay close attention to standing water. If anyone has standing water outside their home or anywhere around, it is advised to get rid of that because that is the perfect place for mosquitoes to lay their eggs, Joe.
So, Guad, as you mentioned, all these Florida cases are in Sarasota. Is there a reason for that?
Well, mosquitoes don't travel very far. According to the expert that we spoke to, they can live, at least the mosquito that transmitted this virus, or is believed to have transmitted this virus in Sarasota, can live 2 to 3 weeks and only travels about a mile in distance. So that's why it stayed in that area. So it's different than a different virus. For example, when we had the COVID pandemic, right? This was highly transmissible, according to the doctors we spoke to, and it can go in the air. With a virus like malaria, it requires a mosquito, and mosquitoes traveling only 1 mile. So they have been able to locate this area where the mosquitoes are and where people have had the virus. So that's why, as of now, it has been isolated to that county, Joe.
And Guad, I mean, these cases are the first locally acquired cases reported in America in 20 years. Do we know why we're seeing this happen now?
Right. So malaria has been considered eliminated from the United States since the 1950s. And the doctor we spoke to indicated that most likely the belief is that someone traveled abroad, and contracted the disease, then came back to the United States, that person could have been bitten by a mosquito, and then that mosquito infected others in the area. Let's keep in mind that malaria is a common disease around the world in tropical and subtropical countries. Millions of people get malaria and recover for it. And also very important for people to know in Florida that are under this health advisory, if somebody contracts malaria, there are medications. There's a test and there are medications that hospitals in places like Florida, where it's hot and humid, are prepared to give to the patients. So this is something that they know how to deal with, and it is common in other parts of the world. As of now, we have these 6 cases in Florida and the other case in Texas. Again, no need for panic, but authorities are they are making some decisions here to spray and to use these planes with insecticides to try to get rid of these mosquitoes in Florida. Joe.
All right, Claude Venegas, thank you so much.
Let's now bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Natalie Azar for more on this. Hey, Dr. Azar, good morning. So we know that this is contracted through this mosquito bite, but walk us through what happens once a person gets that bite. What are the symptoms that come?
So the symptoms, for better or for worse, are kind of indistinguishable from a common viral syndrome or a flu-like illness. So we're talking about a high fever, headache, muscle aches, chills. Some individuals will even experience some GI symptoms like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. I think I want to reemphasize what Guad was saying, is that this is easily diagnosed. So I think it's as much an alert for us as individuals as well as healthcare workers to be keeping this top of mind if someone presents with these signs and symptoms and they test negative for flu and other common pathogens, to consider malaria in the differential diagnosis.
And then how do doctors treat patients who do have this?
So it depends on whether or not the person has, taken prophylactic medication. For example, if they were traveling but still contracted it, depends on their age, their physical condition. But there are a few different options that are pills, oral antimalarials, and as well as IV medications for people who are sick enough to be hospitalized.
Are you concerned? How much of a concern should this be? And if somebody at home is concerned, is there anything that you could do to try to avoid this?
I think it's alarming. One of my friends just said that her daughter was, feeling like, she had all the symptoms, and she said, what if it's malaria? My friend is a nurse, and she wasn't 100% serious because we live in the Northeast and we're not worried about local transmission here. But, again, because one of the explanations for why Florida is seeing this is that it's a very hospitable environment and climate for just this type of transmission. So as we are seeing warmer and more humid summers, I think it's something that all of us need to think about. Again, if you're concerned, you're sitting at home, you have these symptoms, you reach out to your doc, you go to an urgent care, you get tested for things like strep and flu, and if there really is a concern, it's a blood test. You can make the diagnosis and you can be treated. So I think it's just more awareness, again, on the part of doctors who are going to be, fielding these phone calls from patients, and also from us in general, just to not be too overly concerned, but just to be aware.
Absolutely. Dr. Azar, great info. Thank you so much.
International headlines now, starting with a knife attack at a kindergarten in southern China.
Claudio Lavanga joins us now from Rome with that and more. Hey, Claudio.
Good morning, Savannah. Good morning, Joe Walls. Yes, 6 people, including 3 children, have been killed in a stabbing in a kindergarten in China. The other victims are a teacher and 2 parents. The police say they have arrested a 25-year-old suspect. Now, the attack has happened on Monday morning, local time, as parents were dropping their children off. The suspect was arrested 20 minutes later. As videos of the attack spread across Chinese social media, they sparked outrage and concern about violence against children at school. The Municipal Education Bureau told NBC News that the attack was still under investigation. Now to southwest Japan, where heavy rains have triggered landslides, killing at least 2 people. At least 6 others are missing. Officials confirmed the downpours have flooded several rivers and caused dozens of mudslides. Authorities have urged thousands of residents to leave their homes, and almost 2 million residents in vulnerable areas have been told to take shelter. Japan's meteorological agency say an additional 8 inches of rain is expected to fall up to the early morning on Tuesday. And we come back here to Rome, in nearby Vatican City, where Pope Francis announced he has chosen 21 new cardinals. Among the new cardinals, he included prelates from Jerusalem and Hong Kong, places with small Catholic communities. The Pope announced his speaks during his customary Sunday blessing in St. Peter's Square. The ceremony to formally install the churchmen as cardinals will be held in St. Peter's Square on September 30th. Back to you guys.
All right, very cool. Claudio, thanks so much.
Thank you. Coming up, the jacked up jackpots that have America scrambling for those precious lotto tickets. The combined pot that's now over $1 billion for one lucky winner.
But first, a big legal ruling out of Tennessee on gender-affirming care for transgender minors. The controversial ban that could set the stage for other laws like it. That's next. We're back with a major ruling from a federal appeals court impacting LGBTQ rights in Tennessee. The court is temporarily upholding that state's ban on gender-affirming care for transgender minors, making it the first federal court ruling of its kind.
The ban goes into effect immediately. Doctors in Tennessee will no longer be able to prescribe puberty blockers or surgery to minors until the court issues its full ruling in September.
NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos joins us now to explain what this ruling means. All right, so Danny, we've seen a lot of states pass bans on gender-affirming care, and then we've seen courts in Alabama, Florida, and Kentucky step in and say, no, we don't like these bans. What's different about the Tennessee case here?
Well, first, all this is, and a lot of these cases are a decision not about whether or not ultimately gender-affirming care will be allowed or not be allowed. It's about what do we do while we await deciding this case on the merits. This is really about who gets to do what while we're working this case out. So the question is, should minors be allowed to get gender-affirming care, or should we wait and not allow that until the case is decided? And it's not a coin flip. The odds are against the challengers. In other words, to allow minors to continue to get gender-affirming care while they wait, they have the burden to prove that they are likely to win on the merits. So the lower court here concluded that they did make that showing. The appeals court here concluded that they did not. And when you get to the appeals court on an issue of law like this, the appeals court doesn't have to show any deference to the district court, the lower court. The appeals court here did an independent analysis and concluded that the challengers were not likely to win on the merits. And it's always very weird because, in a sense, the likelihood of winning on the merits analysis means essentially the court is forecasting the ultimate winner. They're giving you an idea of what direction this case is going before it's even been decided on the merits.
So we mentioned this is temporary. What happens between now and when this full ruling comes expected in September?
Yeah, the case gets decided. That's really all that's going on when you have these preliminary injunctions and then stays of the preliminary injunctions. A lot of this legal language sounds super complicated, but it really is just about, while we hit the pause button, while we're waiting for things to happen, what do we allow to go on? And again, it goes back to, while we're waiting, should minors be allowed to get gender-affirming care, or should we not allow that while we figure all of this out?
So this is the ruling in Tennessee. Other areas have different rulings. So what happens around the country? And does this feel like an issue that ultimately goes to the Supreme Court, or what?
Yeah, this is really interesting. You're talking about sort of the patchwork situation that we have presently in the United States. And what's fascinating about that is the court, in the opinion, pointed out that that very fact, the fact that there are different court decisions all over the United States, goes to showing that the challenges are not likely to prevail on the merits. Why? Because courts all over the place have differing opinions about which direction they should go. So that alone is evidence that the challenges here are not likely to win on the merits. Ultimately, this issue really can be boiled down to, is the issue of minors being allowed to have access to gender-affirming care, is that a fundamental right that is taken outside the realm of the democratic process, or instead, is it something that the voters should be allowed to decide? That's what all of these fundamental rights issues ultimately come down to.
All right, Danny Savalos, thank you so much.
All right, so I hate to inform you, but you are not a winner. It's okay, no one is. It's because over the weekend, no one matched the winning numbers for either of those two mega jackpots, the Mega Millions and the Powerball. That means you've still got a chance. Tonight's Powerball drawing, now a whopping $650 million.
NBC News correspondent Jesse Kurst joins us now with more on this. Hey, Jesse, good morning. So, look, certainly life-changing money out there for grabs. What should we know about these mega jackpots this week?
Yeah, Savannah and Joe, good morning. Unfortunately, as Joe pointed out, hate that he had to say it, but no one has won yet. But I think I sense some luck in someone's future. We're talking about $650 million, the estimated jackpot, up for grabs tonight with the Powerball drawing. Take a look at those numbers. And then the Mega Millions drawing tomorrow night is worth an estimated $480 million. You're going to have to pay taxes on all that, and obviously you get about half if you take the cash up front. But it would be nice to take it all home. That's what the combined jackpots are worth, $1.13 billion. So we're going to show you how easy it is. Like I said, I think I sense some luck. I didn't mention that I specifically think I'm feeling lucky. $2, that's all it takes for a ticket. Ashish is going to help us out, so we're going to take a Powerball ticket, a quick pick. He's going to ring us up, and hopefully I'll be not talking to you tomorrow morning. That's my hope, guys.
So, Jesse, you're only buying one number? Just one?
For now, listen, we've been doing so many of these stories. I can't let you guys see the numbers. Thank you so much. Can't let you guys see the numbers. We've been doing so many of these stories that I think I'm going to run out of money if I buy more than one at a time. So slow and steady wins the race, Joe.
Got it. You'll buy one with every hit, which will eventually be like 100 hits by the end of the day today. All right, so Jesse, if you or I, more than likely you here, win big tonight or tomorrow, what is the first thing we should do with that golden ticket besides, contain our excitement?
Yeah, so a couple things to keep in mind. You want to sign the back of the ticket. You want to take a selfie with it. That way, you can prove it's yours later if you need to. You also might want to consider getting a financial advisor. Additionally, you may want to consider sending some of this money to charities, which will make you feel good, hopefully, and also will help you with your taxes. Very important piece of advice.
That's a good point. You're helping yourself, but most importantly, helping others. So this is the fun part. We did this last Friday. What are some of the cool things you can buy with hundreds of millions of dollars? Give us some more examples you've thought up, Jesse.
Yeah, so we figured we'd shake it up and assume that you're going to win both of these jackpots this time. Pretty nice thought, right? So with $1 billion, here's what you could get. According to a recent Forbes report, you could buy the Miami Marlins if you're a baseball fan. It's All-Star Week after all. Separately, according to one estimate and some data we saw from an education website, you would be able to send almost 11,000 people to college in state for free over 4 years. So we wanted to give some altruism possibility as well. And then because we're in a 7-Eleven right now, you could buy about 500 million large Slurpees.
Ooh.
Forget coffee.
Very good.
Slurpees. I'm already feeling the sugar.
Oh my God,
that's a lot of Slurpees.
You're saying you won't be talking to us tomorrow really got me.
I love how we've decided winning one of those jackpots is too easy. We need to.
It's got to be both.
Yeah, got to win both of them.
Because we got to be able to buy
Need to be winning both.
Slurpees.
Yeah. You got to think big.
Yeah.
Right. Jesse, thanks so much. Good luck.
Thanks. Coming up, slam dunk or fatal flop.
After the break, some key insight into how the NBA is expected to run its first ever in-season tournament later this year. But what exactly is an in-season tournament?
Yeah.
We're going to break it down after this.
Great.
We're back with financial headlines now. Tech giant Google is fine-tuning its medical AI chatbots.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us now with that and other news. Hey, Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Savannah. Hey, Joe. Yeah, it's all AI all the time, guys. Google is testing an AI program trained to expertly answer medical questions. The Wall Street Journal says Google is betting the chatbot called MedPalm 2 will be better than ChatGPT or others at holding conversations on healthcare issues because it's been fed questions and answers from medical licensing exams. It can generate responses and perform tasks such as summarizing documents or organizing tons of health data. Google already began testing the system with customers in April, including the Mayo Clinic. Separately, Google has expanded an existing feature for Calendar, giving users an easy way to let coworkers know where they can be reached throughout the day. Google first launched working locations in 2021, but now you can set your locations in Calendar for specific portions of the day to more accurately reflect your availability. It could make it easier for coworkers to figure out if they can meet in person or have to schedule a video conference. And more than 3/4 of travelers who've taken an overnight trip this year say they've experienced at least one travel-related issue. A new report from Bankrate found more than half say they've encountered higher prices than they're used to, followed by long waits at airport security or restaurants, poor customer service, and canceled or disrupted plans. About 2/3 of adults have or plan to travel for leisure this year, up from 58% last year. More than 1/4 plan to spend to spend more this year, while 21% plan to spend less, specifically because of economic concerns, guys. Now, I have a leisure trip coming up. At the end of the month, I'm already dealing with an issue for it. So there you have it.
They've already declared a rain delay.
No, seriously, like I already got a message saying that there's an issue. So there you have
goodness,
it.
yeah. I was in a weather issue yesterday.
There you go.
Tough to go places
Summer
lately.
travel. Thanks, Savannah.
Thank you. Well, basketball fans across the country finally have more insight into how the NBA will be running its inaugural in-season tournament this year.
This is sort of a European Cup-style competition. Over the weekend, the league revealed the format and the groups for the competition, which is set to begin on November 3rd. All 30 teams will take part in the group stage. Some will advance to the knockout rounds, culminating with a championship game on December 9th.
NBC Sports host and reporter Corey Robinson joins us now to break down these new changes to the NBA Summer League. Hey, Corey, good morning. So you're going to need to really talk to me like I'm like a 5-year-old here and explain to me what exactly this means. Just make this simple. What is an in-season tournament? How does this work?
Okay, so hi, everybody. So the way it works is that there are 6 5-team groups, East versus West. They play each other in the month of November, right? 2 home games, 2 away games. Then the top 3 teams automatically qualify for this in-season tournament. The 4th one's a wild card, right? So the 4th best team in each of these brackets. And then it's just classic single elimination. It's a duel, and it's the NBA Cup. Whoever can lift the first inaugural one, everyone goes away with money. It's like, I think the winner, everyone on the winning team makes $500,000. So but it's not about the money. For me, it's more a fan engagement tool.
All right. I guess that's going to get people involved. I'm intrigued. It's an interesting idea because then you have so much of the season left to go after that, and we'll see what happens. All right. Let's switch gears a little bit. Talk about the Summer League, what's happening now. San Antonio Spurs superstar Victor Wembanyama in the spotlight again. Played his 2nd game last night against the Trailblazers. Is he living up to the hype so far? How's he being received by fans and by players?
Whoa. I mean, look, Joe, it's 2 Summer League games. He had 9 points and 27 points. You know me, I'm a San Antonio Spurs fan. Let's slow down a little bit. I love what his comments he said afterwards. He's like, I'm basically going to disappear from the media for 2 or 3 months, and the Spurs are going to change my life. I'm just going to train. And that's the kind of mentality you want to hear. Very, very mature coming from a young guy who understands, it's not about just showing up and being a superstar. You got to put the work in. But I don't put any stock into 2 Summer League appearances.
All right. Also on the Spurs, longtime coach, Greg Popovich, he signed a 5-year contract for $80 million, making him the highest paid coach in the league again, passing Monty Williams. What is keeping Popovich from retirement other than this paycheck? I mean, or maybe that's the answer, but is it possible for him to step away before those 5 years are up, or will we see him see this through?
I can't speak for Coach Pop, but I will say this: it is interesting the timing of this. Like I mentioned before, with Victor Wembanyama, you sign this #1 overall draft pick. He's supposed to be this generational talent. We'll see how he pans out. Everyone's really excited, but to commit to him, one of the reasons why I think this is such a perfect spot for Victor is because of Coach Pop. So to let him know, look, at least through the rookie contract, like you're going to be paired up with one of the greatest coaches of all time, and really a Hall of Fame. He's going to be inducted to the Hall of Fame this fall. To me, this is a move to assure Victor, we're here for your development. We know how excited you are to work with Coach Popovich. He coached other French legends like Tony Parker and Boris Diaw. We're here to support you. So I think that's the kind of move that is being telegraphed to the world.
All right. Corey Robinson, thank you so much. A lot to talk about this morning, considering we're not even in the season right now.
Yeah, and I understood all of that, so there we go.
Coming up, all right, Savannah drives to survive.
That's right. Formula One's taking the U.S. by storm, and I sat down with one of its drivers, Lando Norris, for an interview I will not forget. That is up next. Stick around.
Welcome back. Not 1, but 2 extremely rare corpse flowers in California have become rock stars in the plant world by blooming. The first, called Scarlet, is at San Francisco's Conservatory of Flowers. That one last bloomed in 2019. The second is at the San Diego Botanic Garden. That one last bloomed in 2021. Now, as for the smell, this is the key here. The president of San Diego's Botanic Garden describes it as like a teenager's dirty laundry. If you want to catch the tail end of the bloom, you should take a trip as soon as possible These bloomings only last a few days. Savannah, have you ever smelled a corpse flower before?
I have not, but I'm always finding this so interesting.
I did years and years and years ago, but I caught the tail end of it. So apparently I was told it wasn't nearly as strong as it could have been, but it was definitely not a pleasant odor. And I think it's just funny.
It wasn't even then?
No, I mean, it was fine, but people just line up to smell this horrible thing. It's like, this tastes horrible.
Laundry?
Here, try it, you know, but people do it. So.
There you go. All right. Thanks, Joe. Yep. Well, now to an interview I am so excited to bring you with Formula One superstar Lando Norris. Yesterday, he finished second at the British Grand Prix. That's his home race. And before that, I got to meet up with him to talk about the wild life of a Formula One driver, the growing popularity of the sport in the U.S., and to take on the foolish task of racing him.
The impressive thing with Formula One is just the sheer speed of it.
It's one of the fastest motorsports in the world and quickly gaining more fans in the U.S. Formula One's explosion in popularity fueled by Netflix's docuseries Drive to Survive.
It's insane how much bigger it's grown because of that. So many people that I now meet in America, whether it's Miami or Austin, this year Vegas, they say they got into it because of Drive to Survive.
Lando Norris is a fan favorite on the show and the senior driver for McLaren's Formula One team. The 23-year-old's been driving since he was just 7 years old.
So I went into motorbikes first, but then I had a big crash, hated motorbikes, and found four wheels. I tried go-karting for the first time, and then started watching different car racing and so on, and then Formula One eventually. So when I was like 7, 8 years old, that's when it changed to begin the Formula One journey.
The motorsport has a lot of quirks. One of them, each team has to build its own car.
As much as it hurts me to say, you can be the best driver in the world and you can finish in 19th place just because the car's not as good as the others. And that's what makes it tough.
How different would the sport be, and what would you think about the concept of there being a standardized car in F1?
As much as I sometimes wish for that, I think it's what makes Formula One Formula One. People always striving to be better than one another. I think it makes the competition. It drives development, and what you get is an absolute masterpiece of engineering.
I think it's 23 races in 20 countries. How do you deal with jet lag?
I think that's one of the other things within Formula One. It's not just the driving cars, which is the tricky part or the difficult part. It is the travel, the jet lags, not fatiguing through a season because you are traveling so much. Everyone has trainers, everyone has nutritionalists or professionals in this area, mental coaches, something you kind of get used to, but my trainer sets the schedules for me to sleep and when's good, when's bad, what to do, when to not be on your phone, when you can be on your phone.
Formula One's viewership more than doubled in the U.S. since 2020. Last year, Miami hosted its first Grand Prix. This November, Vegas will be holding its first F1 circuit right down the strip.
It's going to be amazing. It's going to be amazing. I mean, everyone knows Vegas. Everyone knows just how cool it is, what it looks like. Saturday night, driving down the strip with all the lights. You see it in all the movies and everything.
You're afraid of heights.
Yeah.
Still now.
Still now.
But you could go as fast as humanly possible in a car, no fear.
No fear. Sometimes fear.
I'm really nervous.
I'm nervous too.
Thanks for saying that. You think I'm gonna be okay?
You'll be fine.
Okay.
You'll be fine.
Let's do it.
Just follow me a little bit.
Just follow you.
If you can. Any final words for you?
Just thoughts of regret.
And we were off to the races, with Lando giving me just a little head start. I hung in there, staying in the lead for the first 3 laps, until he unsurprisingly passed me.
You know what I said? I said you should try going to Formula One.
You said that?
I said it. I was actually really surprised at how quick you were.
Oh my God, I'm so happy.
Which is a lot of fun.
It was so fun.
A lot of fun?
Our thanks to our friends at RPM Raceway for letting me feel like an F1 driver for the day. This is going to be the first time this year Formula One will host 3 races in the U.S. That includes that inaugural Las Vegas Grand Prix that's coming up in November. I'm a huge fan.
And you're entering, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Lando says I'm ready.
It happens
so
at that go-kart track, right? That's where the competition is.
Right across the river in Jersey City. No, but it was so much fun. You know, I'm such a big fan. So
yes,
it was
you're
just
a huge fan.
Awesome to get to
How
ride
cool to
with
meet him too. He was like
he was
gracious.
so fantastic. He was so much fun, and just it was right in between races. He made the time to come see us, to ride with us. It was so much fun. It was
I also
great.
love the detail. He's afraid of heights. Like he'll do all of that, but so he better hope there's never a race like on top of a building.
I know, which I just love hearing. It makes you feel like a little bit better about
you're like, okay, you're human too.
Yeah, okay, which is so funny.
Exactly.
It's like, well, I mean, how scary is that going that fast? It's awesome.
Right.
Thanks,
Very
Lando.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that with us. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now. Good morning. Thanks for joining us this Monday. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, flood emergency. A round of severe thunderstorms overnight pounded parts of New York and New Jersey. The heavy rains triggered flash floods and mudslides, shut down major roads, and left several homes flooded.
This was not expected at all, that's for sure. I've been here 16 years. I've never seen flooding like this at all.
It's not just in the Northeast, those severe storms stretching from the Midwest to the southern plains. And in the South, the extreme heat is not letting up. We'll have your forecast. Show of solidarity. President Biden is rallying support for Ukraine during his 3-nation trip in Europe. He's kicking off the trip with a stop in the UK this morning for meetings with King Charles and the British Prime Minister. And then the focus shifts to the NATO summit in Lithuania later this week. How will they address Ukraine's push to become a member nation of the alliance? Also, steals and deals. Several retailers are slashing prices this week, offering deep discounts on a ton of products. Of all the sales you're going to want to cash in on. And hanging up the cleats, soccer great Megan Rapinoe announced that she is retiring after the Women's World Cup. But she's not thinking about her exit from the sport just yet. What she says she is focusing on as she prepares for her final competition. Reminder, the Women's World Cup not that far away. Everyone's getting really excited about that.
Absolutely. And what a big announcement from her.
No kidding.
Yeah.
No kidding. She's an icon.
Exactly.
We'll delve more into that in a little bit. We're going to begin this hour with the severe storms that are wreaking havoc on the East Coast. The slow-moving system brought torrential rain to the suburbs of New York City, forcing the state to issue a rare flash flood warning on Sunday.
At least one person was killed trying to escape the sudden downpour. Governor Kathy Hochul has issued a state of emergency for Orange County as officials race to rescue people stranded in their cars. NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa has the latest on the devastating storm.
Hey there. Well, you can see some of the lingering standing water around me. These grounds already incredibly saturated from storms we witnessed over the past couple of weeks, priming the region for flooding. This is a vast improvement compared to what we saw yesterday when raging floodwaters toppled trees, collapsed roadways, and forced first responders to make rescues by boat.
Overnight, a string of dangerous thunderstorms slamming the Northeast, washing away cars and collapsing roads.
That's insane.
27 million people now under flood alerts across the Northeast, from eastern New York to New Hampshire.
A lot of traffic, a lot of water.
Oh my gosh. Torrential downpours leaving drivers stranded, like this apocalyptic scene in Orange County, New York, which is now under a state of emergency.
Be advised, Main Street and the traffic circle is completely underwater. I got a car going down the river.
Rain totals there reaching nearly 8 inches, creating hazardous sinkholes in the road. As the sweeping storms turned catastrophic, officials say one woman was killed trying to evacuate her home. The National Weather Service in New York urging residents to avoid the roads, warning, stay away or be swept away. Drivers dealing with swamped roads throughout the region. In Pennsylvania, nearly 10 inches of water left vehicles submerged.
But I just watched my car just swim away.
While parts of Connecticut were hammered by about 5 inches of rain in just over an hour. And it comes as Americans in the South and West are dealing with the extreme heat that's been baking the region. And Southwest temps are expected to stay between 105 to 120 degrees this week, including in some parts of California, where another disaster struck in Los Angeles County, a massive landslide causing evacuations of homes in Rolling Hills Estates.
While back east, residents look for rescues as a deluge of devastating weather wreaks havoc on the region.
And those sweeping storms closing roadways and snarling travel. Yesterday, we saw more than 2,000 flights canceled. Several hundred more today have already been nixed. And commuters won't find much relief if they're relying on train service. Both Amtrak and Metro North are postponing lines in the Hudson Valley area today as so many communities across the region try to salvage what they can from this sopping mess. Back to you.
All right, Emily, thank you.
So how much longer are we going to have to deal with this severe weather? Let's get some answers with your morning News Now weather forecast.
Which means Michelle Grossman is back with us. Hey, Michelle.
Hey there, guys. Well, in the Northeast, we're going to see that starting to dry out. We still have hours and hours, though, especially in New England, of some really heavy rainfall, especially this morning into the afternoon hours. We'll start to dry out later today, but we could see lingering showers into tomorrow. It's the middle of the country where we're watching the chance for severe storms. The Midwest to the Central Plains, the Southern Plains could see some really gusty winds with any of these storms, some large hail, also the few tornadoes. And then we're looking at some rain, too, across portions of the Southeast and really hot. That's going to be a big weather headline still in portions of the South. Let's start with the rain in the Northeast because still some heavy rain is falling. Where you see those brighter colors, that's where we're seeing the heaviest rain falling. So this is mainly through portions of eastern New York into New England, Vermont. That's going to be a big bullseye for some really heavy rainfall, catastrophic rainfall, even life-threatening, potentially life-threatening rainfall. So zooming a little closer here, we're looking at Burlington into portions of Connecticut, also Rhode Island, New Hampshire. We're looking at some heavy rain as well. So we do have flood alerts into Tuesday. Where you see this red here, that is flash flood warnings. That means flooding is happening right now or it's imminent. So if you are experiencing this, you want to get to higher ground, you want to heed any warnings. 27 million people still impacted by flood watches, whether it's a flood watch or flash flood warning, as we go throughout this Monday. And we're going to look at a lot of rain once again. We're going to see up to 5 inches in some spots, even up to 7 in other spots, especially in portions of northern Vermont. And that's going to cause some problems because the grounds are already saturated from the overnight storms. Yesterday's storms, really heavy rainfall fell yesterday, and we're going to continue to see that today. Now let's switch gears to the severe weather risk because we're looking at 9 million people at risk from Green Bay to North Platte, Omaha, also Wichita, Amarillo. Where you see the yellow shading, that is the likeliest spot for seeing some really strong storms. Winds gusting up to 65 miles per hour, bringing down some trees and power lines. Also some really large hail. That causes damage, too. A few tornadoes are possible. And look what happens tomorrow. We have a stationary front, nearly stationary front, that's kind of draped over this area. That's going to bring the same areas, the risk for severe storms, not only tomorrow, but also Wednesday. Winds gusting up to 65 miles per hour. Once again, tomorrow, some hail, a few tornadoes are possible. And then finally, we're talking about the heat still. 32 million people impacted by heat alerts. We have heat advisories, excessive heat warnings. The excessive heat warning is in that hot pink color. 32 million people still impacted by this really dangerous heat. So Phoenix to Palm Springs, we're looking at temperatures soaring into the triple digits once again. Same story as we go throughout portions of the Southern Plains. There's that high pressure in place. It's sort of parked in that area, right? So that's that climate connection where we get that traffic jam. And it's just kind of pumping in this hot air. We're going to see temperatures once again into the triple digits. El Paso has had 24 straight days of 100+ degree weather.
Oh, and I'm betting it's probably not a dry heat necessarily.
You know,
it doesn't matter at that point.
Doesn't matter, right?
Yeah,
when it's over 100, it's just baking, right?
Yep. All right, Michelle, thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Well, this morning, President Biden is in the UK for the start of a high-stakes overseas trip.
Moments ago, the president met King Charles for the first time since the king was crowned back in May. The monarch greeted the president in a ceremony at Windsor Castle. Both men are expected to talk about climate change initiatives, an issue that's important to the king. Before that, the president was in London for talks with British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. The leaders discussed the war in Ukraine ahead of this week's NATO summit in Lithuania. That visit overshadowed by a decision by the Biden administration to greenlight controversial cluster bombs to Kyiv, weapons that more than 100 countries, including the UK, have banned.
We've got a team standing by to discuss all of this. In just a few moments, we'll hear from NBC News foreign correspondent Kelly Kobaya in Kyiv and former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Bill Taylor. But before that, let's get to our chief White House correspondent, Peter Alexander, in London with the latest. Hey, Peter, good morning.
Savannah, Joe, good morning to both of you from a beautiful, bright, sunny day here in Britain. The president today beginning this 4-day trip in Europe with the war in Ukraine intensifying the focus on the future of the NATO alliance. President Biden dousing the hopes of President Zelensky's bid to join NATO. But as you noted, first up for the president today, that royal visit with Britain's new king. President Biden this morning kicking off his whirlwind European trip at 10 Downing Street, side by side with British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. their 6th meeting in just 9 months. For the president, it's not just London calling, but a chance to chat with King Charles at Windsor Castle. It'll be their first time together since the monarch was crowned. The president did not attend the coronation, sending the First Lady instead. At the heart of the president's trip, the NATO summit in Lithuania, just a few hundred miles from the fighting in Ukraine. President Biden looking to solidify support for the country as it's struggling to gain traction with its counteroffensive. This week's summit comes at a key moment following last month's rebellion in Russia, exposing cracks in President Vladimir Putin's leadership. Still, President Biden is dismissing the idea of adding Ukraine to NATO now, while the war is raging.
I don't think it's ready for membership in NATO. If the war is going on, then we're all in the war. We're at war with Russia.
The president's also likely to face criticism for his decision to send cluster bombs to Ukraine, a controversial weapon that's prohibited by most of the U.S.'s European allies. President Biden defending the decision, saying it's a temporary measure, adding Ukraine is low on other weapons.
The Ukrainians are running out of ammunition. The ammunition, they call them 155 millimeter weapons. They're running out of that ammunition, and we're low on it.
Finally, the president will head to Finland to personally welcome NATO's newest member into the alliance. And that backlash over the president's decision to send cluster bombs to Ukraine, not just coming from NATO allies, but from some key Democrats at home as well. One top House Democrat warning that sending cluster bombs to Ukraine could risk the U.S.'s moral leadership, given their more indiscriminate nature. Senate ally Democrat Tim Kaine saying that it could give a green light to other nations to use more controversial weapons in the future. Those cluster bombs, Joe and Savannah, they're banned by more than 100 countries. The criticism focuses on the fact that they release smaller explosives that don't always explode on impact and can detonate later, making them a real threat to civilians.
Peter, thank you so much.
We're now joined by Bill Taylor, former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. Ambassador Taylor, good morning. Thanks for joining us. Let's start with the president's meeting with King Charles. This is certainly not a frivolous visit. This is an important relationship between the two. What's the tone you hope the two leaders are setting together? What is it they should be focusing on?
Well, they'll focus on common issues. They both care about the climate. I'm sure they both care about national security, international security. They care about what's going on with NATO, and they care about Ukraine. So that will be undoubtedly very high on every one of President Biden's discussions.
Let's get to the centerpiece of President Biden's trip, the much-anticipated NATO summit in Lithuania. What should we expect to come out of this summit? How important is this gathering, especially right now in this moment?
It's real important right now in this moment that while the Ukrainians are starting to push back the Russians out of their territory, they are looking to get a signal. The Ukrainians are not, they know that during the active phase of the war, they're not going to join NATO. So it's not going to happen this week. What they do hope for, what the Ukrainians hope for, and what they're likely to get, Joe, is a signal, is a strong signal that the NATO alliance will welcome, even invite Ukraine to join over time, over the next, say, year. There's going to be another summit in Washington in a year, and that would be a good time for the NATO alliance to welcome Ukraine into the alliance.
On Friday, the White House announced the U.S. is sending Ukraine these cluster munitions. This is a controversial decision. What are your thoughts on this one?
No one likes these munitions. We don't like them. No one likes these munitions because of all the things that you've reported. That is, sometimes 2%, 3% don't go off and it's litter the battlefield. The problem is we don't have an alternative. We don't have a choice. We don't want the Ukrainians to run out of ammunition for their artillery. That's key. If they run out of ammunition, the Russians will win. The Ukrainians will be defeated. So we don't want that. We don't have the stocks of the unitary ammunition that we would normally provide. So the Ukrainians need ammunition. We don't have it in that stock. What we have to use are these cluster munitions, just temporarily, until we can crank up the production of the unitary. So it's just a temporary solution.
Do you think the cluster bombs will be a big issue at the NATO meeting this week?
I don't think it's going to be an enormous issue. Yes, a lot of nations in NATO don't use them and don't want to use them. We don't use them. We don't want to use them. But everybody recognizes, the reason I think it's not going to be major controversy, everybody recognizes that Ukraine has to win. And for Ukraine to win, they need artillery ammunition. And if the only option is are these munitions, these cluster bombs, then that's what they'll all agree to.
All right. Ambassador Taylor, as always, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
And now let's go to Kyiv and get the latest out of Ukraine with NBC News foreign correspondent Kelly Kobe. Hi, Kelly. Good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. You know, there's been a lot of questions surrounding those Russian mercenaries, the Wagner Group, and their status. Mercenaries who fought here in Ukraine. Well, today, the Kremlin said that Yevgeny Prigozhin, their leader, along with top commanders, actually met with President Putin just 5 days after that rebellion last month. That the meeting went for 3 hours and that all pledged their loyalty to Putin and to Russia. This is Ukraine marks 500 days of war. This morning, a symbolic victory for Ukraine. 5 commanders who defended Mariupol to the end are now free and home. They were among the last holdouts in the Azovstal steel plant, surrendering to Russian soldiers in May of last year and months later handed over to Turkey in a prisoner swap with Russia. They were released after President Zelensky's meeting with Turkey's president, infuriating Russia. A Kremlin spokesperson said Russia was not consulted, accusing both Turkey and Ukraine of violating the terms of the deal, saying the 5 fighters were supposed to stay in Turkey until the end of the war, one already vowing to return to the front. Now, 500 days into the war, more than 9,000 civilians have been killed, 500 of them children, the UN says, and more than 6 million Ukrainians have become refugees from their country. This morning, civilians once again paying a heavy price after a Russian bomb hit an aid distribution site in the south, killing 4. On the front line, the Ukrainians say they're meeting fierce resistance, but have made a definite advance south of Bakhmut, claiming Russians are trapped in some places. After hearing President Biden has approved cluster munitions, the commander in this battle near Bakhmut saying it will be totally cool. We will be able to use fewer shells. President Zelensky marking the 500th day of the war with this video, showing him visiting Snake Island in the Black Sea, where Ukrainians famously defied Russian orders to surrender at the beginning of the invasion. The president vowing to take back every last inch of land. The president's office still hasn't confirmed that President Zelensky will attend the NATO meeting in Lithuania tomorrow and Wednesday, or at least on Wednesday. But no doubt people here will be paying attention to it. A poll out today showed that 89% of the population here, the vast majority of Ukrainians, want to join NATO. That number up from 49% before Russia invaded last year. Savannah.
All right, Kelly, thank you so much.
Coming up, a soccer legend preparing for retirement. Megan Rapinoe announced that this season will be her last. How she's preparing now for her 4th and final World Cup.
Also, get your wallets ready. Retailers are offering some deep discounts on a wide range of products. We've got a roundup of deals that you will not want to miss. That's all coming up next. We're back now with an urgent manhunt this morning for an escaped prisoner in Pennsylvania.
Authorities say he is likely to be armed and very dangerous, and they're asking the public to be vigilant. NBC News correspondent Ann Thompson joins us with the latest. Ann, good morning.
Good morning. What makes this so frightening is that Michael Burgum has done something like this before. He's been on the lam, leading authorities on a chase that went from Pennsylvania to South Carolina in May. A dangerous criminal, authorities say, with the skills to live off the land and elude capture.
This morning, Michael Charles Burgum is a most wanted man. The Warren County Jail escapee, the subject of an urgent multi-agency manhunt focused on the Pennsylvania-New York border near Warren. It is now expanded through the Allegheny National Forest, say police. The 34-year-old is considered armed and very dangerous, with survivalist skills and military experience that authorities say would enable him to hide in the nearby wooded areas.
He's not going to be able to get a lot of rest. We're going to push hard until we find him.
Acting on tips over the weekend, authorities searched several residences and structures and may have found clues.
We've located small stockpiles or campsites in wooded areas in the general vicinity of Warren, and we believe that at least some of these may be associated with Burgum.
Burgum escaped late Thursday night. Authorities say he elevated himself onto a piece of exercise equipment, went out through a metal-gated roof, and then lowered himself to the ground on a rope made of bed sheets. Burgum faces a long list of charges in 3 states. He was being held in connection with burglary and arson in Pennsylvania. He is a suspect in the rape and murder of a New York woman and is accused of kidnapping an elderly Pennsylvania couple at gunpoint, then leading authorities on a multi-state chase in May, ending with his arrest and the couple's rescue in South Carolina. Once again, authorities need the public's help.
We ask them to be vigilant. We ask them to take reasonable precautions, make sure that their doors and windows are locked, and contact us if there is anything that they see that's suspicious.
Now, Michael Burgum was last seen wearing a denim jacket, an orange striped jumpsuit, and Crocs, but authorities believe that he's most likely changed clothes in that time. Rewards are being offered this morning by the U.S. Marshals and Crime Stoppers for information leading to his capture. And police also say they think he could be getting some assistance while he is on the lam. And they remind people, it's like, that's a crime too. Do not help this person.
Hopefully they catch him soon. All right, Ann, thanks so much.
Thank you.
International headlines now, starting with torrential rain across northern India.
Claudio Lavanga is with us from Rome with that and more. Hey, Claudio, good morning.
Good morning, guys. At least 22 people have died in floods and landslides in northern India. In New Delhi, heavy rains brought the city to a standstill as streets were submerged and people struggled to get to their destinations. Schools are closed and authorities have asked people not to leave their homes unless necessary. In the northern state of Himachal Pradesh, flash floods over the weekend brought down a bridge and authorities used helicopters to rescue stranded residents. Now to France, where the government has banned the sale, possession and transport of all fireworks during the upcoming Bastille Day celebrations. The move comes after the recent riots in response to the killing of a 17-year-old by the police. Fireworks were a popular weapon during the week of unrest, which included some of France's worst urban violence for almost 20 years. However, the ban does not apply to official firework displays organized by local authorities. And we end up in the Netherlands, where a transgender woman has been crowned Miss Netherlands for the first time in the beauty pageant's history. The model shared on her Instagram, "Yes, I am trans, and I want to share my story, but I'm also Ricky, and that's what matters to me." She is now set to compete for the Miss Universe title in El Salvador in December, but an exact date has not yet been announced. Back to you, guys.
All right, congratulations to her. Claudio, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It is the end of an era for an American soccer icon. Megan Rapinoe announced she is planning to retire this year. The 38-year-old says she's going to call it quits once the current National Women's Soccer League season comes to an end. Rapinoe is, of course, one of the most decorated soccer players in U.S. history. She's been a member of the U.S. women's national team since 2006. Rapinoe helped Team USA win 2 Olympic medals and 2 World Cup titles. Off the field, she's made a name for herself by pushing for LGBTQ equality as well as equality in women's sports. Coming up, a simulated mission to Mars. What would it be like to spend a year living on a distant world?
NASA is conducting an experiment to find out what living on the red planet might feel like. We're going to tell you all about it. You're watching Morning News Now.
Welcome back. So behind us is an image of the 3D printed replica. It's not the real thing. It's a replica of Mars that 4 scientists will spend the next year living in.
It's called the Crew Health and Performance Exploration Analog, or CHAPIA, I think is probably how you say that acronym. It's basically a 3D printed capsule that's been sealed up and designed to replicate what living on Mars might feel like.
Sounds like fun, or not. Dr. Paul Sutter is an astrophysicist and science educator. He joins us now with more on this mission to a simulated Mars. He's going to tell us if it's fun or not. Good morning. So first, help us understand what life could be like for the crew doing this, and what is NASA hoping to accomplish with this mission?
Yes, it certainly takes a special kind of personality to volunteer for this kind of mission, because a real mission to Mars is a minimum 2-year duration, and we're only going to be able to send 4 to 6 people tops. And so you have to live and work in an extremely challenging and literally alien environment with half a dozen people maximum for up to 2 years. And that's exactly what these kinds of analogs or simulations are designed to do, to see how people can work together in an extremely challenging, extremely busy, extremely stressful environment.
Yeah, right. You said it. It takes a special kind of person that's going to be able to handle this. In fact, NASA says that part of making this as close to reality as possible is the fact that the habitat will be as Mars realistic as feasible, which may include environmental stressors such as resource limitations, isolation, equipment failure, and significant workloads. Walk us through what are some of the big differences they're going to have to account for here in being in this simulated Mars environment. What's going to feel different than Earth?
Yes, any astronaut that we actually send to Mars will be the loneliest person or group of people in all of humanity. There is no rescue mission. There is no backup. There is no extra supplies. What they have is what they have. And to succeed in the mission, there are going to be an untold number of just things that happen, things that go wrong, things that break, things that malfunction, things that don't work to their optimal specification. And that crew is going to have to problem solve every single day. And so that is what they are trying to recreate in these simulations, is isolating a crew. They can't even step outside without putting on special pretend mock Mars spacesuits. And when they step outside, it's not to take a bathroom break, it's to perform a simulation mission. And the people running the simulation will introduce stressors, things like a system breaking down or something not being optimal or oxygen levels starting to drop. And the crew is going to have to problem solve in real time.
So, Dr. Sutter, the goal here, of course, is a trip to real Mars, not fake Mars. So, reality check, where do things stand with that? How soon could we actually see that happen?
We are actually still relatively far away from a real mission to Mars. Part of it is the sociological, like these experiments are designed to test, of can we get 6 people to work together efficiently and not be at each other's throats at the end of 2 years. Another aspect is technological. This mission to Mars, a crewed mission to Mars, will be the most ambitious space mission we have ever attempted. And there are a number of engineering challenges that we still have to solve. Mars is an alien planet. There is no air. There is no water. The soil itself is full of acidic compounds. There are no trees that you can chop down to make a structure. There's no fire that you can build in the air to keep yourself warm. The gravity is lighter. The sunlight is less. This is a truly inhospitable place, and a mission has to go exactly right.
Dr. Sutter, any small part of you interested in doing the simulation?
I'm fine watching from afar.
I guess that means you don't want to go to Mars.
Yeah, I was about to say, so then the next question would be, do you want to go to Mars?
I'm fine looking at Mars through a telescope.
All right. And teaching us all about it. All right.
That makes me feel better that you feel that way.
Dr. Paul Sutter, as always, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Appreciate your
Good
time.
To see you. All right, when should your child be able to use social media platforms? Well, that is a question that's been agonizing parents since the dawn of the 21st century.
So long ago. Yeah. Even celebrities are speaking out about just how difficult it is to make the right choice. That includes Matthew McConaughey and his wife, who share details about their decision to let their son enter the digital world. NBC News senior national correspondent Stephanie Gosk is here with more on how parents are approaching this important decision.
Oh, it's a tough one.
Ooh.
It's a really tough one. You know, good morning, guys. For better or worse, this has become a kind of rite of passage for kids, getting their own social media accounts. Opinions vary about what age is acceptable, and parents worry about things like cyberbullying, their kids' security, and body image issues. Now, some big-name celebrity parents are weighing in on the debate.
Happy birthday, Levi Alves McConaughey.
Happy birthday, buddy.
Actor Matthew McConaughey and his wife Camila posting a big announcement over the weekend, allowing their son Levi, who just turned 15, to have his own social media accounts, something they admit to struggling with.
All his friends have had it for a long time. We've been holding up.
He knows who he is, and he knows where he's going. I think he can handle it.
He joins the 84% of teens and 38% of 8 to 12-year-olds on social media. The issue sparking debate among all parents.
Do you let your kids have social media? My answer is yes, totally.
While apps like Instagram prohibit those under 13 from having solo accounts, some celebs allow their kids on using joint accounts. Kim Kardashian and her 10-year-old daughter Northwest have a joint TikTok with more than 16 million followers. Other famous parents say not so fast, like Pink with her 12-year-old daughter Willow.
I told her point blank, if you can produce literature for me from a reputable source that tells me that social media is good for you, then you can be on it.
Jennifer Garner telling Savannah and Hoda she gave the same message to her 3 kids with Ben Affleck.
Find scientific evidence that matches what I have that says that it's not good for teenagers, then we'll chat.
And how do they feel at this point?
My eldest is grateful.
Welcome to the Everett house.
Wow! HGTV hometown stars Aaron and Ben Napier also taking a stance, posting, research tells us social media is addictive and destructive for developing brains. Now they're launching a nonprofit called Osprey to help kids stay off social media through high school. And while celebrities know social media can have a dark side, the McConaughey's hope their son is met with kindness and grace.
You're getting a very cool and respectful young man in Levi McConaughey coming at you, and I hope y'all can do your best to treat him the same way.
Their son has already racked up more than 150,000 Instagram followers. Research shows the impact of social media on kids can be mixed. It can be community building for them, but regular use is also associated with higher rates of anxiety and depression. Guys, what the experts say is if you're going to give your kids social media, make sure that you have some open lines of communication. Make sure they know that it can be good and bad and know how they're feeling about it.
Yeah, and if you can set limits, I guess that's something that seems like a wise decision.
Yeah, like maybe not when you're in bed at night, or maybe when you come through the door after school, you know. But be aware as a parent, it's tough if every kid around them is on social media to say no.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the thing we always hear, too, whether you're a celebrity or not, is the parents can model the behavior. Because if the parents are always on their phone, if the parents are always on social media, then that's teaching the kids they should do the same thing.
And adults whose executive function is fully formed struggle with social media, let alone these kids.
Well, most of us are fully formed.
But you're right, it's an important
as far as you're going to get, at least.
Because the answer is not just don't let them have it necessarily. That depends. That can also be destructive in its own way. Be feeling left out, that kind of thing, if they're the only one. So
totally. You have to have good awareness. Yep,
Yeah.
it's tough. It is a tough topic.
Steph Goss, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Coming up, a TikTok trend that has turned deadly.
The dangerous challenge is taking over social media and why rescuers are saying it's completely preventable. Next. Welcome back. A new trend is taking over social media with deadly consequences. At least 4 people, including a father, have died in recent months after trying the dangerous challenge where thrill seekers jump off of speeding boats. NBC's Kaylee Hartung joins us now with a warning on this one. Kaylee, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Joe. The danger of this challenge is all about the physics. It's Newton's first law that an object in motion stays in motion until something stops it. And in this case, if you are hurling yourself off of a boat going 30 miles per hour, that water is going to stop you like a slab of concrete. We want to warn you that some of the video you may see here could disturb you.
A stunt intended to rack up views. It's known as the boat jumping challenge, and it has people on social media leaping off speeding boats into the water. But the flips for likes has led to tragic results. Over the last 6 months, officials in Alabama say the dangerous stunt has claimed at least 4 lives there, drownings that one rescuer says were easily avoidable.
The 4 that we responded to when they jumped off of the boat, they literally broke their neck and, basically an instant death.
Experts say if a boat is moving fast enough to create a wake, the water is not a safe landing pad.
Hitting the water in a moving boat is like hitting concrete from jumping multiple stories up. So it's really, really dangerous.
Gail Culp works to educate boaters and eliminate preventable recreational accidents on the water.
You can wind up with broken bones, a broken neck, or you could end up running into the propeller of your own boat, or another boat could run over you, and that would cause lots of damage, if not death.
The challenge is not new. We found videos of boat jumping on social media dating back to 2020. TikTok now posting warnings like this on some of its videos, noting participating in this activity could result in you or others getting hurt. NBC News reached out to TikTok about the boat jumping trend. They responded by saying it's not accurate to characterize or report this as a TikTok challenge, and that the company can't comment on something that isn't a trend on our platform. This is not the first social media challenge to cause harm or take lives. There's been the Skull Breaker Challenge, where 3 people stand in a line and the 2 on the outside kick out the middle person's legs, causing them to fall back and crack their skull. In the Salt and Ice Challenge, some TikTokers suffered 2nd and 3rd degree burns when they put salt and ice directly on their skin. And TikTok has banned the Benadryl Challenge after at least 1 teenager died, taking multiple antihistamine tablets to induce hallucinations so they could post videos of their experience online. When it comes to these dangerous stunts, TikTok pointed us to its community guidelines that state in part, we do not allow showing or promoting dangerous activities and challenges, and advising, if you see a dangerous activity or challenge, pause for a moment to stop and think before you decide and act.
Going back to that boat jumping challenge, while wearing a life jacket is always advisable on a boat, just like wearing a seatbelt in a car, our safety experts wanted to emphasize that wearing a life jacket when you jump off a speeding boat would not prevent serious injuries or death. That would not stop you from breaking your neck or breaking any bones. To be clear, there is no safe way to jump off of a moving boat. Joe.
All right, Kaylee, thank you so much. Financial headlines now. Tech giant Apple might be working on something larger.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that and other news. Hey, Silvana.
Hey, Savannah. Hey, Joe. Yes, so Apple is experimenting with large iMacs, including a 32-inch version. However, Bloomberg reports development is in the early stages, so it's unlikely we will see a larger version before the end of next year. And it makes sense for Apple to work on a bigger iMac. Experts say they're better for creative types, allowing them to see tiny details in their work. India could surpass the United States to become the world's 2nd largest economy in the next 50 years. That's the assessment from Goldman Sachs. Currently, India is the world's 5th largest economy, behind Germany, Japan, China, and the U.S. Goldman cites a flourishing population, higher capital investment, rising productivity, and India's progress in technology and innovation. Potential downsides to India's growth include a lack of participation by women in the workforce and domestic demand. Instagram's new Threads app has only been live since last Wednesday, and it's already topped 100 million users. It's reached that milestone even faster than ChatGPT, which took 2 months to get there. And users aren't just signing up, they're also posting a lot. More than 95 million posts as of Thursday. Twitter had about 260 million daily active users as of the end of last year, but data from Cloudflare suggests traffic has been trending downward in recent months, guys. I still haven't gone on Threads.
Yeah, I haven't either. Have you?
No.
No? Okay.
So
all right.
The three of us have no opinions about it.
Nope.
We are.
That's it.
All right. Thanks, Savannah. Appreciate it.
Got it. All right, thank you. All right. Well, if you like to shop, this is the week for you. 3 major retailers are expected to announce some deep discounts on everything from crayons to computers. And the deals can't come at a better time. According to KPMG, because of inflation, parents can expect to spend an additional 21% on back-to-school supplies compared with last year. Claire Tassin is a retail and e-commerce analyst for Morning Consult, and she joins us now with more. Hey, Claire, thanks so much for being here. So let's take a look at these dates and talk about where exactly it is that these sales are happening. We have Prime Day. That is always a big one. Target then also has several days of deals, as well as Walmart. Here are the dates on your screen right now. What do we need to know about each of these? And do you think this is actually going to get people out and shopping?
This will absolutely get people out and shopping. We know that this time last year, these sales drove an enormous amount of web traffic and sales to these retailers. We saw online spending in the U.S. rise 8.5% just last year across the Prime days, across all retailers. So we're really seeing a massive impact for all of the brands that you mentioned, and the many more who are running sales just around the same time.
Yeah, so you mentioned that people people you do think are going to head out and shop. How are people feeling when it comes to spending right now, especially, as I just mentioned a second ago, with inflation? Are there certain things that people maybe are willing to splurge on more than others while they've been kind of, experiencing the fact that their wallet feels a little tight?
Absolutely. So people are extraordinarily discount savvy right now, even more so than usual, just given that we've been battling this high inflation for more than a year. And while that inflation has come down somewhat, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's been easier for households to manage their budget. So because of that, people are extraordinarily discount hungry right now. And many people have been putting off a lot of big ticket purchases. So think, small appliances, home electronics that do tend to be really heavily discounted during this time every year.
Yeah, so tell us some things that we can expect to be part of these sales.
Like I said, small appliances, home electronics are always major categories. On Amazon specifically, they're always going to promote their own brand. So anything that Amazon sells themselves, as well as look for deals in categories that Amazon is really trying to grow in. So think like beauty, apparel, are some spaces where Amazon's really investing. Looking across the board, back to school deals, like you mentioned, are a massive part of the sale. In 2022, 45% of parents told us that they were doing back to school shopping during the same sale week last year. So definitely, I know it's, we just passed the 4th of July, but it is time to start thinking about getting a good deal on those back to school necessities.
No, I know. Everybody relax. There's still a lot of summer left. I know you also did, though, report that some parents are waiting to make some of those purchases, right?
Yeah, so it depends on your household budget, right? So when these sales come around, you do need to have the flexibility in your household budget in order to take advantage. If you sometimes maybe need to put off until the last minute just to make the, the budget balance, then that is something that a lot of households might not be able to take advantage.
Claire,
but the sales will continue.
Say that again?
I said the sales tend to keep continuing around through the end of the summer. So retailers are in a really discount-heavy environment right now. So this isn't your last chance to get a good deal.
Yeah, so if you do want to wait, or maybe like we just said, it's the 4th of July. We don't want to think about back to school yet. Kids aren't ready to pick out their notebooks and pencils, all that kind of thing. What would be the next kind of big time that you should be thinking about making some of those purchases?
Toward the end of summer, right before that back to school date starts to hit, I would expect to see a lot of discounts in those categories as well.
Awesome. Claire, thank you so much. Great tips. Happy shopping. Coming up, we've got an exciting update for you on conjoined twins from Texas who were recently successfully separated.
They're now celebrating a major milestone in their recovery. We're going to check in on them and hear from their parents next.
Welcome back. Millions of us could be able to see one of Earth's most beautiful phenomena this week, the Northern Lights. The beautiful natural light show is predicted to be visible in more than a dozen states, including Washington, New York, and Michigan. The lights are caused by wind from the sun hitting Earth's atmosphere and are usually only seen further north. But a solar cycle means more people in this country are going to be able to enjoy them. The Space Weather Prediction Center says that if you are interested in seeing them, you should get away from city lights on Thursday from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. Joe, New York, it makes me want to give it a shot, but, that's sort of in the middle of our bedtime.
And we also have a few city lights here.
Exactly. We'd have to get pretty far away.
That might make it hard, but maybe, just maybe,
exactly.
We'll keep an eye out.
Well,
all right.
Hey, everybody, go check it out if you can.
Thanks, Savannah. It's an exciting day for everyone at Texas Children's Hospital in Houston, where a set of successfully separated conjoined twins, they are finally ready to go home. Today's show anchor Hoda Kotb gives us a look back at their incredible journey.
Sandy and Jesse Fuller are the proud parents of two little miracles, Ella and Eliza. Just 12 weeks into their pregnancy, the Texas couple found out they'd be having a special set of twins.
Our OB, he could pinpoint that something was off. He was like, my gut's telling me that they are conjoined.
The girls already had an inseparable bond, their bodies connected at the abdomen.
They each had their own liver, but they were connected in the middle.
Conjoined twins occur once in every 50 to 60,000 births, and most are stillborn. But the Fullers were hopeful to have a healthy set of girls.
We had already decided, whatever it is, we're going to have these babies.
Then, on March 1st, Ella and Eliza were born.
Once I heard both of them crying and breathing, then I kind of eased down a little bit.
At Texas Children's Hospital, doctors planned to separate the twins. Months later, in June, the girls were brought in for surgery, a bittersweet moment for the entire family. Dr. Alice King led a surgical team of 17.
They're so rare that there's no playbook.
After 6 hours in the operating room, she delivered the good news.
Everything went very, very smoothly. Thank you so much. We're in the recovery period.
For the first time, the two babies were on 2 separate beds. And for mom and dad, a chance to hold each of their girls. Almost 4 weeks later, Ella and Eliza are still closer than ever.
They love being beside each other, and because that's all they've known.
And already growing into their own. Doctors say the twins are healthy and defying all odds.
I think the future has no limits for them.
And back at home, their big sister Emmy is getting ready to meet the separated sisters for the very first time.
She's really excited. She carries these 2 little twin baby dolls around, and she says, "My babies."
A long-awaited homecoming for 2 precious bundles of joy.
Oh, how beautiful are they? We wish the Fuller family all the best in this new chapter and thank them for sharing their story with us.
Absolutely. How incredible to see. Well, finally this hour, a baker in New York State is taking his passion for sourdough to the next level and making those who want his bread really rise to the occasion.
NBC News Digital reporter Maya Eaglin introduces us to Chase Harnett and his weekend treasure hunts.
Before the sun rises on Sunday morning in New York, Chase Harnett is checking how his breads are rising. So what are we making today?
Well, we're going to bake up about 60 loaves of country loaf sourdough.
Sourdough's a little complicated to make, right?
It is, yeah. It's like a 15-hour process total.
A process also to get one. Because on any given Sunday, there's no telling where Chase will leave them.
Part of the enjoyment for me of putting on this little scavenger hunt on Sundays is that I genuinely don't have a set location for it when I wake up in the morning.
By 10 a.m., he selects a spot, sends out word, and the hunt is on.
It's my first time finding it with bread in it. I have raced out to find it before, but the bread was always gone.
For those lucky enough to find the cabinet still stocked, it's pay what you wish.
It's really good.
A bargain considering how much work goes into sourdough. So 3 days and 3 ingredients.
Yeah, flour, water, salt, and the most expensive ingredient of all is time.
For Chase, time well spent.
The concept of just being your village baker is kind of a romantic idea. You get to meet a lot of people, and you get to put smiles on a lot of people's faces.
The support Chase has received will let him open a store this fall. His bread's finally easy to find. Until then, the search for his sourdoughs will continue. Maya Eaglin, NBC News, Ossining, New York.
Trying to imagine the person who doesn't know anything about the social media thing, just walking along, opens up a cabinet, and is like,
yeah, just an armoire right on the river track. Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I mean, it looks great.
Yeah, but a discovery.
How exciting.
Yeah.
You're just out for a bike ride. And,
exactly.
come home with a loaf of bread.
Yeah, get some sourdough. All right, very cool. That does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now, so stay with us.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.